As we all know, Matt Leck loves water boats, he loves ganja, he loves literature, he loves socialism, and he's an avid defender of his senator, Heidi Heitkamp.
Or I'm an active harasser of Kevin Cramer. I like to frame it as the latter.
That sounds about right. Kevin Cramer is the far-right Trumpista Tea Party Republican candidate challenging right-wing Democrat Heidi Heitkamp in North Dakota. And there are some issues in this campaign because, look, the reality is that you can be the most far-right, pro-oil, pro-natural resource extraction, anti-environment, triangulating Democrat imaginable, and particularly in today's political environment, you're still going to be well to the left of what the Republicans put up in terms of, like, I don't think we should rob people's pensions, as an example, and I do support basic consumer protections for people who buy health care, as was successfully achieved in the centrist Obamacare package. Kevin Cramer voted for Republican efforts to kick 20 million people out of health care, to reverse protections for people who are protected with pre-existing conditions. Of course, pre-existing conditions essentially means almost anything in terms of purchasing health care. There's a Texas case right now from the far-right Texas AG to challenge once again Obamacare on those grounds, essentially. And there's a question as to whether Jeff Sessions will direct his department to defend Obamacare in court. There's zero historical precedents. Even in the most extreme times, the Bush administration, you would not see something analogous to the Trump administration and Jeff Sessions considering not defending established law that blatantly. But this is where we're at. And in Plains, Kevin Cramer,
the High Plains Reader.
The High Plains Reader reports that a mother, I believe, was at a Kevin Cramer event and wanted to ask him about how his votes and his views on healthcare would affect the safety of her daughter. We have
she has two sons actually. One has autism and a learning disability, and the other son has epilepsy. So you can tell why she would be concerned with pre-existing conditions.
Right. All right. Let's play this clip.
You tried to attend, Mary, or what was this all about?
Yes, I saw a social media post about this press conference, and it didn't say it was private or anything, and I decided to go. And when I got there at the Farmers Bureau, there were about 5 or 6 other citizens in the hallway. And so I just stood against the wall and waited. And there was a real small room that had a lot of people in there that were apparently just from the press. And someone was going around shaking hands, and I didn't know who it was at the time, but apparently it was Kevin Cramer's campaign manager. And he came up and asked us who we were and why we were there. And I said that I was a parent and a patient advocate, was how I said it. And I smiled, and he asked the person beside me, and that person said that he wanted to know what was going to be said about the Affordable Care Act, and that's why he was there. And he looked at both of us, and he said, just so you know, this is private property, and if we have any trouble, you will be removed. And I just kept smiling because I was so stunned. I didn't know why he would have said that or what they were worried about, but I just smiled, and he walked on.
Hi, Kevin Cramer and his staff are thugs, and we have a second clip where Mary continues. Oh, we have we have the pinwheels.
Talk about the free exchange of ideas there.
Yeah, the free exchange of ideas just totally got blocked.
Mary, did you hear anything that you said those specific questions that you put on the postcards weren't answered? Yeah. But did you hear them get asked anything by the media that would get to the heart and soul of whether or not they supported coverage for pre-existing conditions, or more importantly, whether or not if they won this lawsuit, there would for sure be coverage for pre-existing conditions?
It was kind of scary to hear all of the talk about the different things they could do. I took a lot of notes of what I could hear, and they talked a lot about how states could provide flexibility. They talked about Graham Cassidy, which I know, if I remember correctly, there were like 80 healthcare entities that were against that and cautioned that that wouldn't be the answer to help people. And they talked about how it was, I wrote down ridiculous and irresponsible to say that people were going to lose their coverage if this lawsuit, if they win by removing ACA. And that really scares me. I guess I don't see any concrete evidence that we're going to be okay if we get rid of what's left of our Affordable Care Act.
Well, here's the other part. I had Congressman Cramer right here where Pat Finken couldn't get in between us. And I asked him, I said, you voted over 60 times to repeal the Affordable Care Act. What's your plan? What answers to that? I said, you've never put up a plan that is your version of how you're going to deal with this. His answer to me was that those votes, Joel, you realize that those votes were symbolic. I mean, your life that I just described is more than symbolic. You're living with this.
Absolutely, and I think that those that do not have the struggles that families like mine do need to realize that never in our wildest dreams did we ever think that we'd be facing this sort of catastrophic cost for medical. This wasn't our dream. This wasn't what we had planned. We both work hard, and, you know, it's not like we're asking for a handout. We have insurance, we pay for insurance, and we should have coverage.
Well, first of all, let me just note, as always in any healthcare story, it should never be a handout or anything else. Healthcare should be full, complete, 100%, no questions and ifs or buts, provided for absolutely every single human being in the United States, period, end of story, case closed.
Mic drop. That
said, in addition to that, and that host is good, we should find his name.
I think it might actually be Joel Heitkamp.
Joel Heitkamp. Well, that's interesting.
Of KFJO. North Dakota is a small state.
That makes sense. But let me read a couple of quotes now, though, from this High Plains Reader article, because everything that Mary said is true in terms of there is no plan. Kevin Cramer has voted multiple 60 times to directly destroy and harm and threaten the life of her children.
What he says about the current lawsuit is that he supports the Trump administration doing it because it's a negotiating tactic, which is just fucking disgusting, because he's went along with them. He's been a blank check for Trump at every single time.
And that's a complete lie.
Right.
That is not how this lawsuit works, and that's not how law works. The settled law by the Supreme Court is not to be opening of a negotiation. That is breathtakingly cynical and stupid for Kevin Cramer to put that out. Cramer's opponent, I'm back to the High Plains Reader now. Cramer's incumbent opponent for the U.S. Senate, Democrat Heidi Heitkamp, held a press conference by telephone striking back at Cramer's support for a Texas-led federal lawsuit that Stenjem,
Attorney General for North Dakota,
has brought the state into. The lawsuit seeks to repeal the Affordable Care Act by alleging the law is unconstitutional as its individual mandate is no longer invalid. That's a ludicrous lawsuit that no other administration would run on and should be thrown out by any halfway credible court. On Tuesday, Republicans stated that North Dakota, joined by 19 other states, is not deterred from its participation in the federal lawsuit. During a recent interview, Cramer said that the Republican plan will not hurt those with pre-existing condition, but added that some of his constituents are playing the system. It would. Literally every single bill that he voted for would harm people with pre-existing conditions and get rid of the protection. Maybe we do need to re-review the ghoulish Graham Cassidy bill and re-review Jimmy Kimmel talking about his baby and what that legislation would do. And also just, it's not even the main part of the conversation, the core of that bill, which was slashing Medicaid and throwing 20 million people immediately off of insurance. Literally a terrorist murder piece of legislation. And I'll just add this. Heidi Heitkamp is right to exploit this, and make no mistake that Democrats getting at least one part of Congress is I'm sorry. It's simply essential for protecting what remains of the positive parts of the healthcare bill, and is also essential for a move forward to the absolutely necessary steps of Medicare for all healthcare. But if Heidi Heitkamp is serious about exploiting this, she needs to immediately connect that conversation with all of the corruption probes around Trump and say, and that's why, and it pains me to do this because I'm a conservative, conciliatory, North Dakotan, blah, 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 but I cannot have hearings on Brett Kavanaugh right now because the healthcare bill is in jeopardy. The Supreme Court has been too partisan about some of these rulings recently, and I'm too concerned about my constituents. And I also just don't think it's appropriate that a president with so many questions of ethics and corruption and integrity around should be appointing a justice right now. We need to see what the people decide in November. So therefore, I can't vote to proceed right now. Connect those threads.
Yeah. People always act like I'm crazy for calling for class war, but the class war has already begun. And the other side is very organized. So we need to get organized too.
You know who says that the class war has already begun and the rich are winning? You know who said that multiple times?
Donald Trump.
Warren Buffett.
Oh, wow.